This time on Captain Castle's Laboratory, it's another Mr. Christmas carousel. This is the traditional carousel, so it's different than a couple of the other ones I've done as far as the way it looks, but it's probably going to come apart the same way. Excuse me. So, it's got these little plastics, faux glass lights, which is kind of neat. Not something that they put on a lot of them. Anyhow, this is sent to me because it doesn't spin. So, turn it on. You saw the top jerk. See, if I turn it back, it just goes to one spot. So, volume works. I just have it turned down. So, I'm assuming it's got a broken gear that is wedging one of the teeth. I could be wrong, but we're going to find out. Like all Mr. Christmas carousels and a few other companies, you got to pull the top off, and there's a screw down inside. Number 2 Phillips. So we get the screw out. A lot of times the screws won't come out. That's okay. It gets caught in the fabric. But at least we won't lose it knowing where it's at for the moment. So, underneath, you have 4 clips. Screw does the majority of the work by holding it down. The clips also keep it from coming off. So you have to push the clips up. You can use your fingers if that doesn't work. A small blade screwdriver. Let's move the power cord. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it with my finger and then use the screwdriver just to hold it so it doesn't latch. There we go. We're going to set the lid off to the side with the topper. Like every Mr. Christmas carousel, to get to the mechanism, you have to remove the drum. So we're going to do that next. Just so you know that this carousel is 6 volts AC, not DC. Don't reverse the types of voltage. That's bad. So, we have the rotor assembly, and just like always, they're soldered on, the 2 wires, and then there's the nut in the middle. So I'm going to grab a marker, and I'm just going to mark, just with a dot, the red one. If I grab the black marker, I would have marked the black one. But that lets me know that the inner track is positive and the outer track is negative, because the LEDs, or the lights, sometimes they're DC, they use a rectifier in the bottom. If they're AC, it doesn't technically matter. So, alright, so get the soldering iron, or soldering pen. We got a little fresh solder to the wires up here, so that way we can remove them, so we can get this rotor assembly off. One. And 2. Next is this big nut. Now you can use needle-nose pliers or a wrench, or these plier tips on the end of the stripper. And we just need to unscrew it. Now they do put a dab of glue on here. Sometimes the glue, like this one is, just breaks off and you can spin it. Sometimes you have to scrape the glue off. So It's all, I guess, relative to the age of the product to see if the glue is going to hold or not. The glue has peeled up, so I can peel it off with a pair of pliers so I can finish unscrewing it. The glue is generally a type of either hot melt glue or possibly rubber contact cement. I have done one that was hard as concrete, so I don't know if it was just the glue went bad or absorbed dirt and dust, or if they actually used a hard glue like super glue or a resin. So there's the nut. Now we're going to take the rotor off. Now there are 2 springs, don't lose them. And now this drum should lift straight up and off. Like so. And we're gonna set it off to the side. So there's our drive mechanism right there. Make sure these 2 wires aren't touching anything. And we're gonna plug it back in and listen and look and see what is going on with gears. Alright, the shaft is spinning, but the gear is not on the shaft. So, most likely, this 14-tooth gear is broke. So I'm going to turn it backwards, and sure enough, it is split wide open. So let me try and adjust it to where it'll show up on the camera. And get a pointer. And you see that big old gap? That's why it turns part way and then gets wedged on this gear, and if I kick it back where I rotate that tooth away, once it goes back in, it then grabs again. So this plate is held in from the bottom, so you have to remove this larger surface plate to get to the screws that hold on the gear plate. There's only 5. There usually is only 5. Now you go to lift this up, the wires that come in are usually really short and tight, so you usually can't get it up to go all the way. So that's about as far as I can get it. And this belt is shot. This belt has a huge amount of slack in it, and I'm surprised it's not slipping, truthfully, but we'll take care of that too. But next, we're going to remove the gear plate. First thing we got to do is remove the pulley crossbar, because there's a screw underneath this big pulley. Actually, we may not have to remove the gears. This one doesn't appear to have a captured gear, meaning that the gear doesn't fit through the hole. Looks like the hole here is big enough where I can just pull this entire pulley assembly out with the broken gear. And, there's the dog. There we go. There's the stretched belt, and there's the broken gear, so we don't have to disassemble it any further. So here is the broken gear, and what's happening is I can see how I'll remove the capture bar so you don't think I'm just spinning that. So I can turn the pulley, but I'm holding the gear, and that's basically what's happening in here, which is probably the reason why the belt's stretched. So I need to find this little 14-tooth gear, and then press it back onto the shaft. Now, I'm just going to use this for reference. I know this is the wrong gear. Most gears come with a small hole in the center, usually right around a 1.5 to 2 millimeter hole. That's close to that, and Mr. Christmas uses a 3 millimeter hole. You can see that. So I can go through my different gears, and most likely I'm not going to have the correct hole diameter because of Mr. Christmas being special. But if I have one that's right, that I have enough meat to drill the center out, I will. If not, I have a shipment of gears coming in for Mr. Christmas next week. Probably have to finish it next week. There we go. I actually have some large 3 millimeter hole gears in here. So there's the gear. Surprisingly, I have one. The reason I say that is I use so many that I run out of stock fast. Sometimes it's hard to get it, like the gears I'm waiting for right now for a couple other ones that eventually will be on the channel, is because nobody has them. Even when I deal with my supplier, he had to get them from the manufacturer in Hong Kong. So just going to verify, just double check real quick that it's the same diameter. Yes. So I have one left. Let's get this thing pressed in. Like that. You've seen my other videos, you've noticed I use this a lot, where I find a hole where the shaft fits through, and then I will press or tap the shaft all the way in and set the gear. And if you can't do it with hand tools, then you have a vise, a jeweler's vise or regular vise. You can do it with a vise too. Just be careful that you don't distort the shaft or snap the gear. There you go. Got to protrude through finally. Now there's a very, very small mark on here from where the old gear was, where it was spinning the shaft inside the gear, which kind of put a small etching on the metal. That's where I'm going to try and stop it at, right next to it. So I want to check its depth when I shove it in here to make sure we got full engagement of the teeth. Perfect. So pushing it all the way up to where it's touching the black bushing. My pulleys are aligned, so we're good to go on that aspect. Now let's get a replacement belt for this thing. In the description, I'll link to both Happy Holidays parts, which is where I get my 3mm gears from that I put in a Ziploc bag with my other gears, and Skull Crane for the belt that I'm using. You can also get this belt from Happy Holiday Parts. I just don't have any belts from him at the moment, but I find that the Skull Crane ones work perfectly fine. Let's get the crossbar back on. Definitely want this on because this is what keeps everything centered. Alright, so putting this on, I am off on my gear. The crossbar is flexing, which it should not flex, which means that my gear has to go up a little bit more. So I said I'm right above the line. I technically need to be apparently on the line. So that's better. That's a much better fit. Set it down and it's turning, but it's very, very jerky. So let's make sure nothing else is damaged. So I'm going to remove the belt and I'm going to spin the gears by hand. They're spinning, but they're not spinning smoothly, so it also might need lubrication. So I'm going to double check all that. It looks greasy, but maybe some of it's missing. So let's pop out the 2 screws. Let's get this belt off, like so. Oh yeah, it is real jerky. Do I have another broken gear? Ah, there is a piece of broken plastic stuck in the gear. Probably from when the other gear broke. Let's see if that's my problem. And we have another piece of plastic. Well, that's a lot smoother. There's no more binding or tension on the gears. Now, as I'm spinning with my thumb, and I've mentioned this in previous videos if you haven't seen them, is I keep spinning and I look at all the teeth, and once I go around I look at the next set of teeth. Once that goes around I go to the next set and the next set and the next set all the way across. And what I do is I look for the cracks in between the teeth, a chipped tooth, and in this case some debris caught in the teeth. So in case you have this piece, since it's open, you can see you have a large speaker in here, not the small little hobby ones, but it's a standard cheap, quotations, cheap speaker. And they are, this one is an 8 ohm 1 watt, which is why Mr. Christmas is generally really loud, is because they run a higher wattage. Most of them run a half a watt. And then it's held in with 2 little wings. So if you ever lose your speaker, you'll be you can replace it. Yeah. I guess I gotta put it back together. There we go. Make sure you rotate it to where the gear actually meshes with the teeth and don't just force it in. That's how you break teeth. Since we just took it apart, we don't want to try and fix it, again. So, belt's on. Crossbar. These crossbars are notorious for cracking. Right here where this bushing is. This one's got a plastic bushing. Most of them are a metal, usually a brass bushing. The metal ones crack more than the plastic ones. And I believe it has to do with the corrosion that builds up on brass. The green verdigris causes, it grows between the edge of the bushing and the plastic of the crossbar, which means that it's expanding and it cracks it because it's under pressure. The plastic ones that have the plastic inserts, I think I've only seen one that's cracked. It's pretty rare because plastic doesn't corrode. Plastic doesn't get bigger when it breaks down like metal does. When metal gets rust, the rust pushes things outwards. When copper corrodes or brass corrodes, it pushes things outwards. So I'm assuming everything's gone to plastic now. I haven't seen too many new carousels. Actually, I don't think I've seen any because they're new. Why would they break? No, she's still having issues turning. There we go. This is the super loop. This is the stuff that Happy Holiday Parts uses. I'm going to put some on the spinning shafts to reduce the friction. See if that's my problem. Could be a weak motor. I don't know if you can hear that motor, but it does not sound good. The motor's dying. What I have noticed on some of these is when the gear breaks and they're trying to run and overpower the gear, it damages the motor. So they're 6-volt motors. I believe this is the replacement. Let me read the back. So if your piece fails, try to turn it off, because the motor is more expensive than the gear end or the pulley or the belt. So I'm going to pull the motor out. There's 2 small screws to hold the motor in. Don't lose the screws. I mention it all the time that these screws are, in a lot of cases, hard to find. So let's pull out the motor. Motor is right here. Does this one have a part number? Does not. Turn on the soldering iron, and we're going to take the motor out and test it. Now this one has a small pulley, so I'm going to pop the small pulley off because this one has a large pulley. What I'm going to do is I'm going to desolder these and solder them onto the back of this and make sure that this one works. And if not, I'm going to have to order a motor, because I am out. So, same thing as before, soldering iron. I'm going to unplug it. Even though the power is off, there's still power in the circuit board, and I don't want any backfeeding. So, add fresh solder so we get good heat transfer. And then we're going to pop the wires. The red and the black. That's the red. And the black. Alright, well, she is turning and she's quiet. Not like this one that's noisy. So, let's take the pulley off. Give it a whirl. Alright. Wow, this one's really stuck on there. There we go. I think they put a dab of glue on it, because as soon as I got the pop, I could hear a crack and some clear stuff came off the end. So I think this actually had a dab of glue, keep it from slipping. that's the case, I'll put some on here, but I want to make sure it actually turns the mechanism. Because this motor, the reason it's got the red mark on the back is because I took it out of a parts house. So, could be good, it could be bad when it's under a load. Or actually, in the case of Mr. Christmas, it's a parts carousel, not a parts house. All right, there we go. I know the motor's not screwed in. I just want to set this back on here, make sure the gears turn. I can keep the motor down with my finger. Motor's spinning, but it's not spinning the pulley. That would be because the belt fell off. Might work better now. Okay, it's just spinning in the belt now. This coming summer, I'll be moving my laboratory to a bigger area so I can actually not have a cluttered bench. Actually working on it currently. Well, not currently. Spent a lot of time working yesterday to get it ready. So, kind of excited that I can sprawl out and not have everything cluttered up here to where it makes it harder for me to find things. So, but I'm gonna be taking this to a much larger area. So. Excuse me. Was doing yard work yesterday and aggravated my allergies because it's in the upper 70s and low 80s in Arizona and everything wants to bloom and it's killing me. My goal is to get rid of all of that stuff. All right. Go. It is turning. It's turning better than the other one. Let's put the screws in it now. And test it under a load, meaning we're going to put the drum. This motor still has the screws in it. Now if you need this motor, because you don't have it, and you don't have a piece that you can take parts out of, you can get this motor from Happy Holiday Parts. I'll have their website linked below, as well as Skull Crane, which is where the belt comes from. I do not get paid endorsements from either I don't get paid pretty much from anything. But they do have the parts I use after trying multiple different parts from different companies. I stick with the ones I like that actually work the best. And Mr. Christmas, happy holiday parts. He pretty much has all the OEM stuff. Skull Crane is a huge animatronics for the big Jemmies, and their belt kits are freaking amazing. I don't know why or what they did, but I love them. They seem to work the best, and that's why I recommend them. If this doesn't work, I'll have to order a motor. So when you do this, if you're doing a load test with the weight of the unit, make sure these two wires are not touching, because then that would be considered a dead short. That is bad. And it can damage the circuit board. So, yeah, it still can't move it. I'm going to need to acquire a motor. One last thing, just to make sure it is not a bad motor, is let's see what the power is going to the motor itself. One volt AC. Let's make sure it's not rectified and it's a DC motor. It is. So I'm getting 4.3 volts going to the motor. The motor's rated for 6. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to desolder one of the wires, and I'm going to check to make sure the board's putting out full power, because the board could be putting out 6 volts and the motor draw, because there's a problem with the motor, is so high that it is not allowing it to work correctly. So I'm going to desolder the wire. Once the machine gets up to full temperature, there we go. Once it gets up to full temperature, like that. Turn it on, just so you know that's on. Put the music on very quietly. So 4.6. So it doesn't have much of a drop. And I'll do it this way so it's yeah, so there's nothing on AC because it is not an AC motor. So it's rectified. Alright, so I'm going to leave this here at the moment, and I'm going to go order a motor. So I will return to this one once the motor shows up. It generally takes about a week. So, alright, see you in a couple of moments. Alright, it's been more than a week. It's actually been about 3 to get this motor. It took 2 weeks to get it because, like the last package, it disappeared in the mail, and I hate that. That's the second time in a row. It's not the shipping. I think it's the weather, since we've been having really strong weather patterns. But anyhow, I put the new motor in, and it spins. So I put the top on to make sure we got good power. You've seen how you do that. You just reverse it. Once you put the motor in, you run the 5 screws around the base, and then pull the wires in, drop the top, pull the wires back out, solder them, mark them like I did with a little red mark that tells me which one's hot and which one's not. So and then adjust the tension of your nut right here, which adjusts the tension onto the 2 discs for the rotor, and wherever the power switch is. So I'll be turning the lights off in a moment so you can see what it looks like, but there you go. But we want to put the top on. And trying to adjust this captive screw, because this captive screw tipped at an angle. So this just needed a new belt and a new motor, big things. These captive screws are sometimes annoying. It's only captive because of the fabric, and captive means that the screw doesn't come out. I might have to try and push it through the fabric. There we go, like that, because it's upside down. But that's the screw. So if you lose it, you just mash the threads and see it's a short little guy. See if I can drop it straight in. That's what I mean, it gets caught in the fabric, so we gotta push it down. And then it sticks out right there. Give me a second here. Alrighty. So number 2. And it turned upside down again, so I'm going to stick it on before I drop it in. Make sure you line up the 4 fingers with the 4 notches. Sorry about the dog. She's going to be making noise now. Locked off her sight to the world. Barking because the door is open because it's nice outside and people are walking down the street. So we just closed off the door so she doesn't interrupt. Why does it keep turning on me? The fabric keeps twisting and getting caught underneath the lip. There we go. So when you put it on, make sure your little pieces here on the edges don't get pinched. Pop it in. Drop your screw in. And if you've seen any of the Mr. Christmas videos prior to this one, they're all pretty much the same. And you can glue this if it's a tight fit, like that one is. You don't have to. You can almost lift the unit up. Actually, I can. So, if it's a super tight fit, I don't recommend gluing them in. So, the motor came from Suntronics out of Florida. That's their card, or also known as Happy Holidays parts. I got a lot of the Mr. Christmas parts from Victor. He's a nice guy. And one of my one of the pieces did get caught underneath. Normally, when I order stuff from him, I get in a couple days because I get the shipping notice when he ships it. But like I said, I think it's because we've had such a wild winter. We've had a very wet winter here in Arizona. Lots of snow in the high country and lots of water in the low country. I'm trying to get the fabric out. Well, that's easy to do. I'll just take the screw, loosen it, and pop the top. But let's make sure this thing looks good in the dark, like we normally do now. And lights. So you can see the glow. Horses are going up and down. It's going in the right direction. Also, that's one of the nice things about the motors I get from Victor. I'm turning the volume down so it's not so deafening. Lights coming back. I ordered 2 motors, and here's the other one. But if it doesn't have a mark, like this one says the positive, there's a red dot. So they come marked, so you know which side's the hot and which side's the not. Now you do have to solder on the capacitor right there. See the little guy? And it comes with some lube for the gears. This will do 6 or 7 units. It's a little too, because you don't want to put so much in, you destroy it by it leaking inside. But the motor I put in here had the red dot, and this one has the plus sign. So that way you know your polarity's right, so it's not spinning clockwise. So that is it. There is this carousel from Mr. Christmas is now done. They're all basically the same. Always start on the top, pop the button. You might have to use a spudger, whether it be a rigid spudger like this, or a flexi spudger like this. And then you're good to go. You need a screwdriver, number 2 Phillips, every single one of them. You can use a fat one so it doesn't jump the teeth inside, and then pop the top. Now where the pop's the top, it'll vary from carousel to carousel. Some have 4 fingers, some have 5 or 6 around the outside edge, while these are closer to the center. Some of them don't have any fingers. Once you take the screw off, the whole top comes off. It depends on the diameter, and if it's fabric or plastic. This one, well, they're all plastic, but if it's got the fabric liner like this one, or if it's just a solid plastic dome. And that's how you'll be able to tell when you look underneath. The bigger the diameter, the more fingers, and the fabric ones usually have less than the solid plastic ones. Probably don't pinch it like I did right there, where I'm going to have to fix that. So, then once you get that, you have to desolder the 2 wires on the rotor. Pull that off. Pull the wires up and then tuck them in. Make sure you disconnect the power so you don't arc those 2 wires and burn the circuit board. Take the nut off, pull the nut off, pull the rotor up. Once the rotor's off, make sure you don't lose the 2 springs. Then you can pull the whole drum out, and then you have access to the moving parts underneath. They're pretty simplistic. You do need a soldering iron. You do need a hot glue or rubber contacts. I mean, if you break the wires free from where they glue it on the base so it doesn't get caught in the moving gears. But you will need the soldering iron, because you do have to desolder and resolder those rotor connections. And then the next biggest thing is don't lose the springs. When I put this back together, one of them shot away, but luckily it landed in the middle of nowhere, and I saw it instantly on the tile. So, but that's it. They're pretty simple. Anybody that has a Mr. Christmas piece that's broken, I recommend that you try and fix it yourself. They're pretty common assembly, so they're all about the same, and you can get the parts from Suntronics out of Florida. It ships everywhere. Unfortunately, sometimes the weather slows it down. So anyhow, just so you know, there will be a little bit of a delay in future videos, and it's not because I don't want to make them, it's because my camera I'm filming on is dying. You may have noticed on a few of the more recent videos when something is bright white, I got the black lines rolling through. It's because the auto adjust in the camera is failing for white. It might even be doing it now with the white stripes. The viewfinder doesn't show it, but the video does. And it's starting to corrupt the SD card. It's not recording right. So I have another camera coming. Once it shows up, we got to set it up, do a couple of test videos to make sure it auto adjusts to the lighting in here and that the sound's good, because this one uses a built-in mic, this other one uses an external mic. Guess how sensitive it is, how much background noise it picks up comparison to this one, and it's much larger, and I might have to modify my mount that holds this camera to do it. So I do have more videos coming, but it might be a couple of weeks from this one. Also, we're getting ready to, in about 2 months' time, to take this whole laboratory down. I know many people wanted to see it, but trust me, it's a little dinky hole-in-the-wall room. And we're moving it to a bigger area, which then we can show you when everything's laid out and not all cluttered. So during that transition, there'll be nothing filmed either, because everything will be tore apart, because this bench doesn't fit through any of the doors. This bench that it's on is a rather large, rather heavy bench. It's an outdoor style bench that is brought in pieces and then reassembled, and it's solid steel, except for the 1 inch thick top, and then there's a top over there too that's higher, that this light down here is under. And this thing is 6 feet long and almost 5 feet tall. And it's just shy of 3 feet deep. So it's a rather large bench, and unfortunately it doesn't fit through my doors in one piece. And that means I got to empty it, both top and all the drawers, and the top up there. But once the new thing is set up, show you how I have it laid out. It'll be like this where it is now, just less cluttered, more accessible, and we should be good to go. So just so you know, over the next couple of months, videos will be a little bit more sporadic, except for some of the older footage that we have from things we did prior to setting up a YouTube channel. Just due to the fact that, one, camera I'm recording on is going bad, and we got to set the new one, and two, moving from a hole-in-the-wall room in the house to a real room in the house that's going to be dedicated just for repair videos, and we're thinking about doing some live repair videos, so you can actually watch the entire video live and ask questions, because I actually have an external monitor that is right there. You can't see it, but it doesn't plug into this camera, but the new camera plugs it in, so I can actually see the viewfinder on a big screen, and I'll have it also where I can do a split screen to see any questions that come in as I'm doing a repair, because it is it's an actual monitor that's mounted on the wall. Basically, I put it up there so I don't have to look up schematics for other things, because they don't give you schematics for this. I can see it on a much larger screen, and it even plugs into your cell phone, which kind of sucks because it doesn't do the ratio correct. So it is what it is. But anyhow, hopefully this helped somebody. You can always look up any and all of the Mr. Christmas carousels that I've done on here. You can see how they're all uniform, not like the other companies are. Emax isn't quite as uniform. Neither is Department 56. But Mr. Christmas stuck with the design that worked for them. It still works for them. And there you go. Also, don't forget that even if we can't get as much filming done due to some other issues, we are still doing the giveaways. So there'll still be videos, whether they're filmed with a camera like this or a cell phone like this, for the giveaways every month. Every month we're giving away, and right now it is currently first week of March, and it's the Mr. Christmas magical mailbox, which will be drawn for the month of March on April 1st. And then April will be Department 56 Halloween, which a lot of people look for these. So if you are one of those people who collect the Halloween series, especially the ones from Department 56, you'll definitely want to see what's coming up in April. So stay tuned, enjoy, thanks for watching, till the next one.